Welcome to another episode of SCSU Local, your show about everything Central Minnesota. I'm Tashiana Osborne.
And I'm Nu Chang Vu. Today we will be diving into the Power of Diversity Leadership Conference that took place at St. Cloud State University last weekend.
SCSU Local starts now.
Keynote speaker Dr. Jeffrey Milan provided fresh idea to increase diversity in our community. Here's what he had to say.
I'm a professor of education policy, higher education policy, and most of my work focuses on issues around race equity, access, success, race relations in education and the role that educational institutions play in that. And I focus a lot on racial dynamics in higher education.
And what is the racial dynamic right now in higher education?
It's thorny, it's contested. It's been that way for quite some time, and I think it continues to persist as we become increasingly more diverse as a society. We seem to be increasingly inept in terms of trying to, use that diversity as the positive force that it really can and should be on our college campuses. The key to that is to engage people across communities of difference and to insist upon having their administrators, their faculty members, others in the community make that engagement happen and take place. Well, I don't know that there's a college or university that does everything well. There are, I think, pockets of innovation where people do things well. I think the extent to which really the important first step, but it's the first step, it's not the only step, has to be to create a compositionally diverse campus. The more diverse people you have in an environment, the more opportunities you have to engage across communities of difference. The second step then is to create regular opportunities for people to engage across difference with diverse people, diverse information, diverse ideas, diverse classes, diverse curricular content, diverse experiences for that matter. To make that as central a part of the institution's mission as you can is what's really key to being able to fully maximize these benefits that exist.
What are some of the workshops that you're doing?
I did one this morning that was, open to more community members. There were some students there, some staff, some of the employers came to it, but it was talking more about what we know based upon the empirical research about what the benefits of a racially, ethnically diverse college and university are. And then this afternoon, in a few minutes, I'm going to actually work with the directors of multicultural affairs and some others to sort of continue that conversation, but also to show them how they can use data and self-assessment in ways to really sort of stimulate that transformative discourse that needs to happen to try to put these places in change that need to happen.
What is some of the advice that you would give to some of the student leaders and faculty members that are kind of pushing for that diversity?
I'd say to continue to push to build coalitions and come together to sort of energize for the kind of change, to put pressure on senior administrators and others to be a part of that process as well, and to look internally at themselves, perhaps first and foremost, about how in the work that they do, that they can make this a central part of their own experience in their work and their teaching and the kind of learning environments that they work to create. For any student who has the interest to do whatever they need to be able to do that, increasingly a college education is a requirement for opportunity and for access to job opportunities, to professional opportunities, to civic engagements.
I was told it's not what you know, it's who you know.
So whenever and wherever you can, do what you can to attend college, to graduate from college, go to graduate school, change the world.
The conference wasn't just about the speakers. Networking opportunities were also provided at the Diversity Job Fair. Let's see what it had to offer.
27th, we had two huge things going on. Career Services organized the Diversity Job and Internship Fair, and Multicultural Student Services had their annual Power and Diversity Conference. And Multicultural Student Services was really interested in organizing a diversity conference for students, and so they approached us about partnering up, and so now this is the third year that the two have been run together. What can students look forward to at a job fair? Well, the Diversity Job Fair, largest on-campus job fair we've had here in 5 years.
My name is Brent Hogren. I am a staffing specialist for Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota.
I'm Joanne. I work with Catholic Charities.
Good news for students. It's showing that the job market's picking up a little bit. So we'll have 63 different employers registered. Actually, I had to turn a couple away because we ran out of space. The Multicultural Student Services office also wanted to know if we could add in a graduate school fair. So we've got 13 different graduate schools coming. So we got a couple school districts. One of them is planning on offering contracts on the spot, which is pretty unusual. Lots of businesses, lots of engineering, lots of technical, government, nonprofit, human services, healthcare. So it's interesting. It's also the most diverse employer base of any job fair. We run this career prep program, and that talks about, well, what do employers expect you to know before you walk up to them? Help with your resume. We actually had 22 employers here just to coach students on how to talk to an employer.
The first thing I will say is you have to dress professionally, and you have to learn certain things professionally, like eye contact, handshakes, and all that little stuff. Just stress that it's important, but I don't know. I think it is.
I would expect that the student coming to our table would know a little bit about Catholic Charities, have done some research on what type of positions we have, how that fits into their career path, and ask a lot of good questions, be friendly and open.
And one thing the students should definitely prepare before they come is know some of the employers that are here, and be prepared to ask questions and know what their passions are and the fields that they're looking to go into, so they can narrow it down when they're speaking with those employers, so they get the answers that they're looking for. And employers want to know where their passions lie, because you want to definitely get somebody who is going to be interested in the employer or interested in the career fields that they have open.
There were so many wonderful opportunities provided at the conference. When we come back, we will see what else it had to offer.
Stick around.
1 in 5 Americans is living with a disability. Over 50 million people, including many of our friends and neighbors, teachers and co-workers, heroes and leaders. 20 years ago, the Americans with Disabilities Act guaranteed every person the right to live, work, and participate fully in the American experience. We've come a long way since then, and we are committed to making even more progress in the years ahead. Visit disability.gov to see how you can help.
Keynote speaker Becky Martinez spoke her own words of wisdom and provided techniques to support diversity in an organizational setting. Let's hear some of her innovative ideas.
Was speaking about, well, many things. So organizational needs in a diverse society was the title. Okay. And it was talking about how to create inclusive spaces at work, how to seek those spaces. So whether you're an employee or a student going to search for a job, really what to look for, what do you care about, what are you passionate about? Is that congruent with what the organization is? And then is what the organization put out congruent with who they are? So that was kind of the premise.
What got you interested in diversity and kind of creating that aspect in your workplace?
Yeah, unintentionally, life. As a woman of color that grew up working class poor, I think that that is the beginning of my story, but I also am able-bodied. I'm Catholic Christian. You know, I'm straight, and so I have lots of power in pieces, which I didn't learn about until like 8 or 9 years ago, in my 30s. And you know, I think seeing people pained isn't where I want to be, where I want them to be. And so really thinking about what do I want humanity to be? And my philosophy now is, you know, I want to leave the world better than how I entered it.
How important do you think diversity is in a workplace?
Yeah, that's what I do for my living. So I think that I would say extremely important. And for me, it is diversity beyond just the numbers, right? So it can be lots of folks of color or lots of folks that are gay or have different religious beliefs besides Christianity. But it is how do we support the diversity in organizations? That is the key for me, because you can have people, but it doesn't mean that they're treated well.
What are some of the ways that someone who is put into, you know, a workplace where they want to create that diversity or make it a more comfortable, inclusive place for everyone? What would they do?
Yeah, so I think they need to. That's a great question, actually. I think that they need to be patient, right? And so not be the diversity police and point everything out of what folks do wrong, but as they first enter, to really be able to kind of sit back and see, what's working well, what's not, where are there places that are inclusive and where are there gaps, and how then can they have conversations, right? How can they leverage who they are and the folks around them to fill in those gaps, and knowing that we are all on a spectrum of what inclusivity means.
Do you think there's any point where, you know, that perfect world of diversity in your workplace is ever met, and do you think you ever realize that, or do you think it's always a process that you have to just keep working towards?
I think it's a process. I have never come across an organization that's got it all together.
What are the benefits of working in a place of diversity?
One, individually, I think people can feel safe and secure in who they are. So if they have a different religious practice besides Christianity, they can feel safe in who they are. That's one example. Or they can have, if it's a same-sex partnership, that they can have that picture of that person on their desk. And in this society where it's not homogeneous anymore, that there are a lot of experiences, ways of thought, identities, that is the way that the world is and is going to continue to go. And so how are we embracing that? How are we learning about that? Which is really about learning about ourselves. You know, what means a great deal to me, or what am I biased, and how do I work on that? And so that I can meet my clients' needs, because they're different than I am.
The group Inspire Collective put on their fashion show, Thrift Store Swagger. This team of explosive personality aims to motivate local youth. Here's more how the exciting show came together.
Hi, I'm James Matson, and I'm here with the founders of the Inspire organization, and I'm going to learn more about it. Hi guys, how you doing?
Good.
Great.
Could you please tell me a little bit more about yourselves and what Inspire actually is?
My name is Dane Oline. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm a tour guide here on campus, so I'm a little familiar face. That's probably why. Walking backwards all the time. Majoring in peace studies and communication studies, and I just want to change the world with swagger. So that's how Inspire is going to be doing it.
Okay, so you're talking about changing the world with swagger. What kind of swagger is the Inspire organization going to be doing?
Well, for instance, we had our first day called Inspire Day. So we had 45 kids from the Boys and the Girls program come into this event. Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just got to jump on the bike and ride. That's what we're doing. Boys and Girls program already made a central location. We went in, we had 12 different workshops. We sent a care package to Kenya, started a pen pal Puerto Rico pen pal ship. We sent thank you letters to Afghanistan troops. We're letting all the people who sponsored a kid a shirt, a thank you letter back, and then all the kids got shirts. Sodexo, the organization on campus, sponsored 450 desserts. We had 20 pieces donated to the event. The kids just, in the end, just got hooked up to the fullest. And in the end, we gave them all this shirt. So this is our shirt that has like this is our creed. Dream, love, create, inspire. If you can dream it, love it, you can create it. So inspire is just that. No matter what age, sex, diversity, gender you are, what background you have, you can achieve your dreams. You just gotta believe.
That's pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. I hear you guys are doing something with the diversity conference that's coming up. What are you guys planning on doing for that?
Well, we've been talking about this for 2 days. We have a group of at least 7 people that started this, and we've just been planning and planning and planning. And there's surprises. We can't really say much now, but it's just, we're going to execute it.
Long story short, come to the first night, opening night, the variety show. We might as well just call it Thrift Store Swagger, because that's what it is. It's going to be the best fashion show with swagger. It'll be cool.
Swag.
What an amazing event. I was able to walk down the runway as part of the Inspire Collective, and I found that the crowd was very enthusiastic about the show.
For more information on Inspire Collective, go to www.facebook.com/inspire. We will return with more highlights after this break.
Traditional light bulbs actually generate 9 times more heat than light. Switch to Energy Star light bulbs, and you'll realize just how much cash you were really burning through. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov.
Welcome back. One of the most influential anti-racist writer and educator, Mr. Tim Wise, was also generous enough to provide a keynote in this year's diversity conference.
But I guess in theory it's true that young people are more likely to mix than maybe ever before, more likely to know each other perhaps than ever before, more likely to bump into one another than ever before in the halls of their school, but none of that suggests equity.
I mean, diversity is just sort of a fact of life, you know. It's a scientific fact, it's a demographic fact, it's a social fact. I think what it means to me, though, in the context of a larger discussion about inequality, about injustice, about inequity, is usually it's a term that's used to avoid that deeper conversation. It usually is sort of a Band-Aid that we put on sort of an open sore of injustice, discrimination, inequality, racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, et cetera, rather than dealing with those real issues. So we'll have institutions talk about being more diverse, but they're not necessarily going to be more equitable. You know, they get people in the door, but are they really making sure that, you know, folks of color or working class kids who come to a college or university, are they really having an equitable experience? Are they treated equitably in the classroom?
That isn't evidence of equity or justice or a post-racial America, as some folks would have us believe. That's the kind of stuff we got to talk about.
I would definitely recommend this because I don't feel like diversity is something that's recognized in a lot of schools. People just don't think about it. And if someone were to come to this conference, they could get a better definition of it and they can get more insight on how to embrace diversity in their area or bring it to their area.
It's very educational, a lot of information you'll learn, and you're actually meeting a lot of people.
when you have a community that's 90% white, that first of all, that's not America anymore. I mean, it's just not. That's not what America looks like. Demographically, it's much whiter than the country as a whole. And I think that's going to end up in 10, 15, 20 years being really problematic. Not so much for people of color, though it'll be a problem for them too if they come through and they're really isolated and marginalized. But it's going to be a problem for the white folks, because white folks in St. Cloud are not going to spend every waking moment of their lives in St. Cloud. They may not stay here. They may go elsewhere. And if they do, they're going to have to know how to interact with folks who are quite a bit different from what they consider normal. So I think when you grow up in these isolated spaces, you don't really know how to interact. You don't really know how to operate within a multicultural context. And in a 21st century America, it makes you sort of an anachronism, you know. But I think beyond that, you know, when I first came to St. Cloud, I remember having conversations with students of color who said, you know, even if the school does everything right in making us feel welcome, when we go shopping, when we go out to recreate on the weekends, when we are driving, you know, back to the Twin Cities to go out and do something that we think is fun, we're constantly under suspicion. We constantly feel like we're being followed and monitored, and they are. Racial profiling has been a problem in this community, as it has in others, not any more or less. But what that means is that the colleges that are isolated have to be doing outreach to the community. You know, the college can't do it all. The college can't do all the diversity programming and not bring in the K-12 schools, or do all the programming and not bring in the employers, or not bring in the civic organizations or the religious institutions. They all have to be involved in this process, because otherwise what you do is you might create a little oasis on a college campus, theoretically, where everybody's treated equitable. But then what about when you go off those campus grounds? You know, then all of a sudden you're being treated unequally again.
It really challenges you to question yourself and question other people and really learn more about just life in general, and like learn other people's stories. Like I've probably learned more through this retreat and other retreats like it than I have, you know, in a couple months, just like everyday living.
I would recommend it because I think there's a lot to be learned from it. I think it facilitates the conversation about race that a lot of times people don't want to have, but that still needs to happen. And I think you're probably kidding yourself if you think there's nothing for you to learn here. So
I will tell you that what I do see that's different is that, you know, we're having this conference where we're really talking about these issues in a pretty in-depth way, and bringing in some incredible speakers and different events all this week, and that kind of dialogue, that kind of real high-level dialogue involving students from all over, is something I didn't see when I first came 11 or 12 years ago. At that time, the isolation was far greater, I think. The conversation was at a much lower level. So just the fact that the school's doing this, and of course I know the context within which this is happening. I mean, there have been a litany of racial incidents in this community and at this school, a history of institutional racism that was confirmed by 2 or 3 independent audits, none of which the university wanted to accept as being true, even though they hired the auditors. So I realized that given that history, there may have been some pressure to have this conference, but that's fine. You know, whether they would have done it without the problems or not, they're doing it. And the people who are putting it on, I think, are going to make a real difference in this institution, and I hope that it continues, you know, strong into the future.
Coming up, we will see Ariel Lucky's unique presentation style. SCSU Local will be right back.
Crack down on
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Ariel Lucky, Artistic Director of the Free Land Project, showed conference participants his creative skills in poetry, acting, and playwriting. Here is more on his artistic performance.
Ariel Lucky, and I am the Artistic Director of the Free Land Project. So one of the things that I've found as I have toured the country going to schools and community centers and different organizations is the way that history is taught in this country, for the most part, is still very much outdated and very much culturally biased, representing a white perspective. And so one of the things I'm really excited about is breaking that open, and I do that through theater and the work that I do.
Connection to the land, but why don't my people have it?
I try to understand. My family sold our culture for American whiteness.
But it's a part of a bigger conversation, bringing in all the different perspectives, right? So what is the Native American perspective of this history, et cetera, right? All the different communities that we are a part of. So I think the way that we learn history is really fundamental to the way we see the world and understand political issues of today. And so I think we all really need to take a really deep look and critical look at how history is being taught to children and in this country, and everybody really, and how that impacts our ability to live really in a equal and democratic and just society.
What am I doing here? Where do I come from? And what does it mean? Is this what they wanted in the American dream?
So tonight I'm going to be performing a keynote version of my one-man show, Freeland, which is a hip-hop theater documentation of my journey into my family history. Part of my family history is that my grandfather grew up on a ranch in Wyoming, and as a young man I was interviewing him and I found out that that ranch was actually a homestead. It was given to my family from the government for free, so it was free land. I started doing more research and found out that that was the very same place that there was a battle in 1876 between the U.S. Army and the Northern Cheyenne.
The Dull Knife Battlefield. This is it. This is what happened on that land.
And so I started recognizing that, you know, if that battle hadn't happened, if the Cheyenne hadn't been kicked off their land, my family would have not gotten the land, let alone for free. So as a white person, I've gone through an incredible journey really kind of digging into that history and reconciling with what it means for me today, 21st century, still living on stolen Native American land, and still engaged in this process, raising big questions about justice, democracy, and sovereignty, all of these bigger issues.
It was written, spoken and screamed, opening dreams of vision, provoking a stream of consciousness transition, this intuition to listen. We must make sacred decisions to listen.
So I'm really glad to be here at the Power and Diversity Conference to share my story artistically and theatrically and to help spark that conversation about what does Native American sovereignty look like, what does justice, democracy look like in this country today.
I almost believe you. I'm just playing.
So one of the things that was really powerful for me when I started doing the research on my own family history and learning the story about my family's homestead was that it's not just my story. In fact, studies have shown that 20% of white Americans alive today have at least one ancestor who homesteaded. So that means a lot of white folks in this country got free land, and that free land had been stolen from Native people. So it's one of those things that isn't very well known, isn't talked about a lot, but I think creates some of the foundational pieces of this conversation around diversity, around multiculturalism. What does that look like today? I think we have to address some of these issues of land ownership, citizenship, all these kind of fundamental questions as part of that conversation.
Anybody ever been out to California? Make some noise, I can't see you. All right, 3 people. Yeah, that's cool. You should come out and visit sometime. It's a great place to visit. How many people, make some noise if you're from St. Cloud? 3 more people, all right.
The Power and Diversity Leadership Conference was a great opportunity to learn more about ourselves and our community. The keynote speakers and the event really brought something special to our campus.
To find out more about this or previous conferences, head on over to www.stcloudstate.edu.
To see this or other show again, catch us on UTVS Channel 21 or log on to www.youtube.com/SCSU Local.
Thanks for watching.